Hello, I want to welcome you to our YouTube channel, Escaping the Revolving Door of Prison. I'm John LeMaster. You're viewing the second session now of a 12-session course entitled Escaping the Revolving Door of Prison. In our first section, as you'll remember, we went through an overview of the entire Escaping the Revolving Door course, where we briefly covered the 7 major contributors to reoffending that the inmates at a correctional facility where my wife Kathleen and I were teaching a Saturday evening Bible study class came up with as reasons why men and women reoffend after being released from prison. If you haven't viewed that first session, I'd recommend that you view that first before you go on to this session. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button below, and would you give us a thumbs up, if you will, if you find this video helpful? And would you also give us some feedback in the comments section as to how we might be able to improve your viewing experience on our channel? We said to ourselves, what better way to find out what the causes or contributors are to someone reoffending than to ask inmates, many of who were serving additional sentences for reoffending. As I mentioned in class number 1, statistics show that approximately 68 to 77% of released offenders end up back in prison within 5 years because of a tendency to relapse and either commit another crime or break the rules of their parole. You see those statistics here. The purpose of this series of life-changing classes is to provide the necessary tools for inmates or recently released inmates to never spend another day of their lives behind bars or behind razor wire fences. Your life is just much too valuable to spend in a jail or a prison. In this session, we want to go into a little bit more depth on the first of the 7 reasons these men gave. If you'll remember from that first class, the number 1 reason the men at the correctional facility where my wife and I were teaching this class gave for reoffending was that they surrounded themselves with antisocial friends. Now, that was my interpretation of their responses. Well, what they actually said was they had surrounded themselves with bad women and bad friends. When we minister to women in prison, they have a different take on that, as you might imagine. They say they surrounded themselves with bad men and bad friends. What did they mean by that statement? Well, they were saying that they had surrounded themselves with people who were rebellious and antisocial that had a negative influence over them. Antisocial is defined this way, as you see on the screen. It's used to describe people demonstrating any sort of behavior that's contrary to the laws and customs of society with the express intent to violate the rights of other people. Before we get into this class on how our friends influence, I want us to make you aware of what is different about this course. In this course, we're going to challenge how you see yourself. We want you to begin to rethink what you're capable of doing and who you really are. Others have tried to define your identity or who you are inside by what you've done in the past. They say the world believes that your past behavior determines your identity. So if you've broken the law, they conclude that you're a criminal, you're a loser, you're a person that should be locked up in jail or prison and the key thrown away, so to speak, and never be given another chance. But because we're human beings and subject to making mistakes in our choices and our decisions in life, Those mistakes do not determine our identity or your identity. If these mistakes are made over and over, they become good, strong indicators of your future choices, but they certainly don't determine your identity in any way. We can all change our behavior by seeing ourselves differently as God sees us. How do you think God sees you anyway? Do you think He sees you as a failure? As a person that's not worthy of His love and care and protection? Let me tell you something. Maybe you're not aware of this, but that's not how God sees you at all, my friend. God sees your heart. He sees what motivates you. He sees your humanity. What's that, John? Well, that's that human need we all have to feel valuable and unique and to feel important. Then God sees your potential. In other words, He sees your destiny as related to His plan for you. In fact, God sees you not as a failure, but He sees you as a mighty man of God or a mighty woman of God. Don't think that you can never rise above the mistakes of your past. Don't limit yourself or your abilities by what you have done in the past. See your incarceration in prison or jail as a result of making mistakes that you made, but that's not who you are down deep inside. Don't see this time as punishment, but see this time as spent in a training room to make yourself stronger. Learn to make better choices and reap the rewards of those better choices. You know, those aren't empty words, by the way, because in this series of classes, we're going to show you exactly how you can go about doing that. I recently watched a special on TV about a company was trying to retain coal miners. And with the coal industry, as you know, suffering a major setback because of the desire of many to have cleaner burning fuels for power generation, the owner of this company was going to retrain these laid-off miners to help them learn how to do computer programming. It's so interesting, 950 laid-off miners applied for those 17 available jobs. And one of the brightest and most capable of those hired was a young man who, strangely enough, after only 2 weeks on the job, he quit. And the reason he gave for quitting that promising job was that he was just a coal miner and would always be just a coal miner. He had limited a bright future he would have had because of how he viewed himself. So my question to you today is, how do you view yourself? And is that view of yourself limiting your success in life? Well, let's get back to this number one reason for reoffending that the men in our class came up with. The number one reason, obviously, they said they had surrounded themselves with antisocial friends. As I mentioned earlier, those words surrounded themselves with antisocial friends were the words I used. What the men in the class actually said was they associated themselves with bad women and bad friends. There's an old wise saying that says, birds of a feather flock together. It's hard to say. What's the meaning of that statement? It simply means that a person tends to enjoy the company of those who like or dislike the same things they do. These people get together in fellowship to share their attitudes, their interests, and their goals. So who do you spend your time with? Is the time you spend together with your friends making you better? Or do the things you do together sometimes lead you to regret? Good friends, someone had said, is like nutrition for your soul. Do the people close to you make you healthier? Or do you binge on junk food together? The people you spend your time with directly influence you Even if you feel like you're different from them right now, in 5 years, I guarantee you, you won't be. God made us to need each other. We all have different gifts and strengths, different failings and different weaknesses. When we join together, we can look out for one another. We can help one another. We can encourage one another and even challenge each other to grow. But as you know, friends can also shape your character so that you end up being closer aligned to the kinds of things they want to do because of this peer pressure that's very strong among friends. The Bible has something to say about this tendency to become like those we surround ourselves with. In 2 Corinthians 6:14 in the New Testament, it tells us not to be yoked together with unbelievers. Now that word yoked here means to team up with or be paired together with someone who does not look out for your welfare and your success. This scripture is often used by preachers and Bible teachers to guide believers who are contemplating marriage. But it's also beneficial to guide us in not teaming up in any way with people who practice breaking the law or encourage others to do the same. In 1 Corinthians 15:33, that Bible verse, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. What this is saying is it's impossible to live a life that's unaffected by other people. Their attitudes and opinions tend to shape our perspective and they influence our decisions. One young woman told of her experiences with the influence of others. She said, I can think of many times in my life when I allowed the negative influence of others to sway my better judgment. It started when I was young. In grammar school, my close schoolmates would say, oh, come on. We can sneak out of that classroom without the teacher ever knowing. Oh, he found out soon enough. In high school, my friends would say, oh, come on, don't be such a drag. The party's going to be a blast. But I found out with so much alcohol and drugs available, my friends couldn't even remember what kind of party it was. In college, my friends would say, hey, let's go get pizza. It won't hurt to skip that old class today because, of course, a professor ended up covering topic that weren't in the textbook. And what happened? They were on the final exam, and my scores showed the lack of my class attendance. As a young married woman, I often heard those words, your husband is such a tightwad about money. I think he's a control freak. No, he wasn't. He was just trying to give us, help us get a down payment on a house. But I didn't have enough discernment yet to realize how this other woman's suggestion undermined my marriage, she said. Like many things in life, the moments in which we've been swayed by bad influences are easier to see after they've already happened. Given the reality that the attitudes and opinions of others shape us, we need to learn how to recognize and respond to people in our lives who may indeed be bad company. You need to learn to exercise discernment as to which are your true friends. Friends who will be a bad influence, are they really friends? No, they're not friends at all. I call them false friends. So what is discernment? Well, discernment is the ability to make shrewd and intelligent judgments of your friends in order to evaluate what kind of influence they'll have on you. But how do you learn to exercise discernment about the influence of other people on you? Well, one way I've found is to give a little mental test to those who you think are your friends or your significant others. No, I'm not talking about one on paper where you bring out a piece of paper and give them a list of questions to answer, but begin to take mental note of things. You know, what do they think about? What do they talk about? what they reflect on and visualize and daydream, and yes, even fantasize about. This little test will give you conclusive evidence of who they are and how they will influence you. If they talk about getting high or committing a crime, but being smarter this time so they won't get caught so easily, they're telling you exactly what kind of influence they'll have on you. If you're choosing people as close friends who have a criminal mentality, you're setting yourself up for their influence, and it'll end up resulting in disappointments and wrong choices. As I mentioned earlier, these people aren't your friends. Friends want to help you attain your goals and be successful when you're released, not help you return to prison. These so-called friends have aligned themselves with you because they think you are just like them. You're antisocial and you want to continue in that direction in your life, but you know you really don't, because you don't want to return to prison and for another life-wasting sentence. Are we saying for you not to associate with people who you feel comfortable with or who are antisocial? No, absolutely not. What we're saying is that you don't have to stop associating with these people, but you have to limit their influence on you by setting up boundaries. There's a book written by Henry Cloud and John Townsend called Boundaries, where when it says to say yes and when to say no. That would be a great book for you to read sometime if you got a chance. Just casual observation will allow you to understand the negative influence antisocial friends have on you. For example, within your circle of acquaintances, there are probably friends that you may be aware of that's been arrested, convicted, fined, placed on probation, or maybe even incarcerated, while others have not done so. Additionally, we may have information on some within your circle who violate some laws fairly regularly, while others don't do that at all. Some may even be active in violating laws concerning drugs or have difficulty conforming to property right laws. So what do? They end up stealing property of other people. These individuals who support a life of crime and are engaged in it will tend to have a strong effect on what you do. They'll entice and support a way of life that you're trying to break free of. Those who are not helping you and encouraging you to reach your goals, they're not your friends at all, as I've mentioned. In addition to keeping an eye open for the characteristics that we talked about earlier, it's critical to understand how the corrupting power of bad words and bad company works on us, and why we sometimes give in to those influences. Hebrews 12:1 in the New Testament tells us to let us strip off and throw aside every unnecessary weight and the sin which so readily clings to and entangles, and let us run with endurance and steady and active persistence the appointed course of the race set before us. It's the nature of wrongdoing and rebellion to entangle us, to trip us up, and to drag us down. These are like barnacles on a ship. You know what barnacles are. Barnacles are things that attach themselves to the hull of a ship underwater where they can't be seen, but they cause the ship to begin to navigate in a way that it was not designed to do. Doing wrong weighs us down and makes it difficult for us to navigate life correctly. We are around those whose lives are enmeshed in rebellious activity. We're exposed to their entangling influence in at least three ways that we want to look at. First, through the appeal of rebellion. The rebel is thought to be cool, He didn't take anything off on nobody, as the word said. Second, through the desire of others to approve of us. Do you want to fit in, don't you? You don't want to be some kind of an oddball. And thirdly, through the inherent pleasures of doing wrong. The first influence, the appeal of rebellion that I mentioned. If you've been around young children and young kids, then you already know rebellion lies at the heart of even little children. You know, no is one of the first words out of most children's mouths, not mommy or daddy. You say something like, you know, you need to share something with your little brother. Their response is what? No. Well, growing up doesn't change that tendency. We don't like anybody telling us what to do, not even God. Submitting our lives to His leadership is hard for us, and it was hard for even some of the characters of the Bible. The nature of our heart predisposes or makes us all prone to rebellion. Like Eve in the Garden of Eden, in the Old Testament book of Genesis, we're easily enticed to disobey God through the snake-like influence of bad company. The second influence is a desire for man's approval. We want accolades, we want kudos, we want respect. We all crave the endorsements we believe are going to validate us and make us feel important and worthy as a person. We don't want to be thought of as an oddball, so there's that tendency to go along with what other people are doing around us. Most people tend to give in to the pressure of their friends because they fear rejection. They want to be accepted by a certain group of people. When someone influences to make a choice we know is wrong, we have in effect decided that that person's approval is more important to us than doing what's right, and it certainly will end in regret. The third influence that I mentioned is the pleasure of doing wrong. Let's face it, doing wrong is pleasurable, at least in the beginning. Whether it's the excessive use of something that we could be very thankful for in moderation, or the tantalizing allure of illicit pursuits. Doing wrong always promises to satisfy our deepest longings. For you out there that are fishermen, what's a fishing lure? Why, it's artificial bait, John. Well, a lure is basically a lie. You are promising the fish something that lure can't deliver. They're looking for a tasty meal, but it hides that awful hook that ensnares the fish if they take the bait. Synonyms are, you know them, tempt and entice and attract or coax, seduce and persuade are just a few to name. A few of those terms. Usually doing wrong has its strongest influence on us when we're struggling to cope with the difficulties of life. During such times, we have to be aware of those that would have us believe that the pleasures of doing wrong are just not worth worrying about. You know, if I comment to a friend, you know something, I need to restrain my appetite in an area, and they respond, oh, come on. It's not that big a deal. I need to pay attention to their negative influence on me. How can we tell when we're being influenced negatively? Well, here are just a few signs. Let me give them to you. If you feel consistently heavy-hearted or agitated or depressed after spending time with someone, if you're violating areas of conviction, those firmly held beliefs or opinions you have, and you tend to violate them when you're around other people. If you're making questionable decisions that never were options before, and if you're careless regarding areas of your weaknesses. If you're rationalizing, that's an attempt to justify your behavior. Thoughts that you previously avoided, you just can't seem to avoid. These are neon signs that alert us to the possibility that someone's having an effect, a negative effect on us, and pulling us in the wrong direction. What should be our response to negative influence? We've identified someone in a negative influence. The next step is, what are you going to do about it? Well, broadly speaking, I think there's basically two important ways we can go about doing that. First, we need to decide how much to limit our exposure to the person. And then secondly, what we should do to seek out the protective influence of healthy relationships. So let's take a look at that first response, that we should limit our exposure. The first step in dealing with a person that's negatively influencing you is just to reduce the amount of exposure to that person. You know, I don't think there's a set formula for discerning where to establish protective boundaries, but just because someone influences negatively in one area doesn't mean they can't positively affect you in another one. But we have to weigh those contributions to see if they're more positive than they are negative. I've also learned that limiting negative influence usually involves one or more of the following steps. Setting boundaries, as I mentioned earlier. We might not have a problem spending time with a person at work, but we may not need to, we may want to cut that time off so that we don't spend time after work with these people. We need to learn, like I said, learn to say yes and when to say no. Next, we need to distance ourselves. We need to spend maybe we need to spend some time and just have some space in order to decide how to handle this situation. And then obviously the third way of handling this is more drastic and maybe necessary. But we have to flee the company of those who have a strongly negative influence on us, and we simply need to get out from under their control. Another decision we'll have to make is whether or not to communicate this with a person about our reasons for limiting our contact or maybe even ending the relationship. Sometimes talking openly with someone about his or her influence can open the door to a deeper relationship. It might also encourage them to take inventory of their own vulnerabilities. You might have to just tell them how you feel. You may have to do something most people feel very uncomfortable with, and that's to confront those friends who are trying to control or manipulate you. You may have to say something like this, I really like you. But I've been trying to straighten out my life, and lately I've realized that you're a negative influence on me. I have a choice to make. I can either continue our relationship as it is, or I can just end the friendship we have unless you can help me out here, that you can agree to make a commitment to me to be a more positive influence. Would you be willing to do that? With this approach, you can find out if he's a true friend or not. The second response we should have is submitting to positive influences. In addition to limiting negative input, we also need to submit our lives to the positive influences that will protect us. Submission to positive people. Just think about it. Who are the good influences in your life? Down deep, every one of us know who those people are. Go with those inner feelings, because the temptation to follow the crowd is going to be great. Bad company, the Bible, as I mentioned earlier, says, bad company does indeed corrupt good character. But if we remain vigilant, we keep careful watch over over ourselves, if we're honest about our own weaknesses, and if we seek out the protective, positive resources God has graciously given us, we don't have to be drawn into a destructive spiral downward. Someone said we don't live in a vacuum, so we need to ask ourselves, who is influencing us? And to consider where that influence is moving us closer to or further from regret. Friends can greatly influence your choices. In 2014, a study done in the Journal of Consumer Research found that friends often bond by providing one another with moral support to resist a temptation. However, these friends also commonly conspire even together to enjoy indulgences. So researchers discovered it came to resisting temptation without friends were more likely to become partners in crime as they decided to indulge together. You're likely to start acting like the people you surround yourself with. Pick friends who make poor choices, and what's going to happen? You're going to get dragged down right with them, right, very fast. But if you choose friends who inspire and challenge you to become better, wow, you'll increase your chances of reaching your goals. Our success in life more often comes down to the people we choose to spend our time with. Isn't that interesting? It's not necessarily how smart you are or how talented you are or even where you were born or the family environment you grew up in. Well, these all have some part to play in of how successful you're going to be in life, but in comparison to the impact of surrounding yourselves with people can lift you higher, it doesn't even compare. Think of two guys, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. They've been friends for more than 25 years. Both of them billionaires today, regularly discuss industry news and take time to bounce ideas off of each other. By choosing the right group of friends, you can push yourself to achieve bigger and better professional goals, they say. Those are their words, not mine. You will move in the direction of the people that you associate with, says Warren Buffett. It's important to associate with people who are better than yourself. Wow. Why is it so important to associate yourself with successful people? Because these people influence our way of thinking that results in a mindset for our success. Let's look at some successful people who became successful through their friendships. I just mentioned Bill Gates. In his high school and early college days, he became friends with Paul Allen. They spent a lot of time together and both contributed to the idea of how important the computer would be someday. And they decided to quit college even and go in business together to form a little company in their garage that they called Microsoft. Wow, the rest is history. Three other fellows, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne, struck up a friendship in their high school and early college days that culminated in a company they also started in their garage, of all places, Apple Computer. Now, of course, these are extreme examples, but I think they tell the story very, very, very well. What if these guys had gotten together for antisocial purposes? Hey, guys, let's all get together and take drugs. Or, hey, let's figure out how we can commit a crime and get away with it. I know we're pretty smart guys. We could probably do that. I think their destinies would have been significantly altered had they done so. Our habits determine the person we become. You want to be successful? What do? You surround yourself with successful people. You want to be happy? Best way, surround yourself with happy people. You want to be healthy? I tell you what, surround yourself with healthy people. They'll help you be more healthy. You want to become more confident? Surround yourself with confident people. In essence, we become more like the people we hang out with. It's like Jim Rohn says this. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Take a moment and reflect on the following. Who are the people you spend the most time with? Do they elevate you or do they bring you down? Are they proactive go-getters exhibiting qualities that you admire, or people that just sit around and criticize and look for excuses? Do they motivate you or do they drain you? The awesome thing about being around positive-minded people who have a habit of chasing their dreams and believe in taking responsibility for their lives is, guess what? They'll be inclined. That'll help you be inclined to grow in a positive direction as well. They'll have an impact on your thinking and consequently on your behavior. They'll support you on your journey and move you toward inspired action. How do you maximize the amount of time spent with these people? Well, do this. Only associate with positive, focused people who you can learn from and who will not drain your valuable energy with uninspiring attitudes. By developing relationship with those committed to constant improvement and the pursuit of the best in life and what it has to offer, you will have plenty of company on your path to the top of whatever mountain you want to climb. That's a quote by Robin Sharma. When you're released from any prison, there's so much technology available to allow yourself to be surrounded with inspiring people. Google, Twitter, Facebook, even audio books available free in many places. As a result, I've put together a few ideas, including these more modern methods on how you can begin creating a more optimal environment for your personal growth and success when you get out of prison. Attend events in your local town or city that appeal to your interests, that can help you learn something useful or even arouse your curiosity. Seek out people who have skills and qualities that you admire and learn from them. Never assume that they have nothing to learn from you. You can always learn from someone, regardless of where they are in their own life. And minimize the time you spend hanging out with the wrong crowd and unhealthy influences, those pessimists and those who hurt your chances of achieving success. Another one is to read more. Read more books and listen to blogs. When you'll be exposed to inspiring success stories. Expand your library of knowledge and nurture your creative thinking. Successful people tend to read a lot. The most successful people I've found spend 4 or more hours a day reading to develop additional understanding and skills. And then follow inspirational people and those you can learn from on social media channels. Subscribe to newsletters. Many of these newsletters are free. They'll add value to your life and help you towards you reaching your goals in life. And here's a good one. Spend less time in front of the TV and on your phone and more time getting out there and connecting with people. You can never know what it might lead to. I want to tell you something, a true story about a man named George Wilson. On December the 6th, 1829, 2 men, George Wilson and James Porter, got together and robbed a U.S. mail carrier in Pennsylvania. Both men were subsequently captured and tried. And on May 1st, 1830, both men were found guilty of 6 indictments. And on May 27th, both George Wilson and James Porter received their terrible sentences. they were to be executed by hanging. The sentences were to be carried out on July 2nd, 1830. James Porter was executed right on schedule. But George Wilson was not, because shortly before the set date, a number of Wilson's friends pleaded for mercy to the President of the United States, Andrew Jackson. President Jackson reviewed the case and issued a formal pardon. He thought the charges were pretty extensive and probably went too far. And the charges resulting in the death sentences were completely dropped. But incredibly, George Wilson refused the pardon. Can you imagine? Wilson stated he had nothing to say, and he did not wish in any manner to avail himself in order to avoid the sentence. The authorities didn't know what to do. Should they just open the prison gates and let him out, or should he be hanged? The case went as far as the United States Supreme Court, and Chief Justice John Marshall handed down the decision of the court. Here's his exact words. A pardon, it's an act of grace. It's proceeding from the power entrusted with the execution of the laws. A pardon is a deed, and delivery is not completed without its total acceptance. This decision meant George Wilson had chosen to be executed rather than accept the pardon of the President of the United States. You might be saying right now, what a fool. What a fool he was for rejecting a pardon. But wait, God's offering you a pardon. You see, he wants to forgive you of everything you've ever done wrong. He wants to wipe the slate clean and set you on a path to freedom from the past. Will you take God up on his offer for a complete pardon so that you can begin a relationship with him? He loved you so much, the Bible says, that he sent his only Son to die as a sacrifice on a cross and give you the gift of everlasting life with him. And not only that, but the abundant life right now here on planet Earth. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he's near. Let the wicked forsake their way and the unrighteous man their thoughts. Let them turn to the Lord, and he'll have mercy on them, and to our God, for he will freely pardon. The most important step you can make to free yourself of the mistakes, bad choices, and hurts of the past is to begin a personal relationship with God. Or perhaps maybe you've fallen back into old habits and you need a second chance. And you need to recommit your life to the Lord. To help you with that process, I've assembled a document I call the pardon. Now, this decision card has a simple prayer and a place for you to sign and date to show yourself that you have indeed made the decision to accept Jesus as Lord and Savior. On the back of the listing of 12 things that God immediately does for us as a result of making that decision, this card is being provided as a service to help you if you choose to accept the Lord as your Savior. I'm giving you these free, absolutely free of charge. If you will send me your address on the contact page of the website, LeMaster Ministries, I'll send you a free copy. Here's the back of that same card. If you prefer, I can send you a digital copy if you'll just give me your email address on our contact page of our website. Remember, lemasterministries.com. But if you're in prison right now, I'll send you hard copies to the chaplain at your institution. If you'll just ask the chaplain to contact us on our contact page of lemasterministries.com and have them request the card for you. Make sure to click on the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up if this video's been of help. This is John LeMaster saying, I'll be looking for you at our next session when we'll be talking, bringing the third session in this 12-part series on making better choices based on our convictions.